Right, now it's time for our top 10. And we were talking to Nita Hazel about kind of out of the way places in South Africa. So, what I thought I would do is do 10 totally remote destinations in the world that are totally remote yet still worth seeing. This is a more tricky list than just places that are really, really far away. So, at number 10, on top 10 remote destinations worth seeing, is Supai, Arizona in the USA. That's right, USA, remote. Yeah, you wouldn't think that continental United States would make it onto this list, but Supai is a tiny little town of 500 residents, which is perfect for the list because it's at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. It is the only place in America that still gets its mail delivered by a donkey, which travels down the side of the canyon to deliver it there. It's so inaccessible that, in fact, it was ignored on the US Census in 2000. They just basically recorded it as having zero population, but it's 500 people down there. So if you are in America and you want to get away from it all, and you think you can brave the canyon edges, then Supai, Arizona. At number 9, totally different side of the Cold War. Number 9 is Sakhalin Island in Russia. It's a mostly uninhabited island off Russia's eastern coast. Foreigners weren't even allowed to visit there until 1990, when they kind of opened it up because of the oil drilling that was going on in the area. But basically, what you do, this is the directions on how you get there. You start in Moscow, standard flight to Moscow. Then you take the Trans-Siberian Railway across the continent to Khabarovsk in eastern Russia. Ride a hydrofoil to Komsomolsk and another train to Vanino before booking a ferry to your destination, the island of Sakhalin. The reason why you would go through all this hell is because there's an entirely unique culture there. These people basically were cut off from the world until about 1990, and apparently, by all accounts, really friendly. They'll take you into their home, they'll give you their food. So if you're the kind of cultural adventurer, that's one to look out for. Number 8 is the Tibetan Plateau. And the reason why I've put this on the list is because it's actually, according to a recent study, the most remote place in the world. It's the furthest away from absolutely everywhere, which basically means that this is the one place that you should go if you hate people. In fact, there's so few people here that an earthquake hit right in the heart of the Tibetan Plateau 4 years ago, a 7.7 on the Richter scale, and not a single person was hurt. So it's basically 2.5 million square kilometers of land. It's 5,000 meters up. The southern rim is the bit that everybody kind of knows because that's where Mount Everest and 13 other high peaks are. But basically, it's just mile after mile of empty wilderness. So if that's your idea of a good time, there was a Swedish explorer who crossed across there for 81 days, didn't see another single person. Number 7 is Concordia in Pakistan. Concordia is the meeting point between the Baltoro Glacier and the Godwin-Austen Glacier in the center of Pakistan's Karakoram Range. Basically, this is where you'll find a bunch of the other high mountains in the world. K2, Gasherbrum, Broad Peak. Basically, they're all there. It's absolute total wilderness. You have to walk for about 10 days until you reach the foot of K2. You fly into Islamabad, and then you start trekking out, and it takes you an absolute age to get out there. But the rugged beauty of of those mountains, just unstoppable. And on the border of two glaciers. At number 6 is a place called Attu Island, also in the United States. It's on the western end of the Aleutian Islands in Alaska, and it's the easternmost point of the United States. It boasts an almost difficult-to-maneuver landscape of volcanoes and valleys and a volatile climate of year-round fog and storms. There's only about 20 people that live there, though, which makes it kind of a unique, sort of empty, doomy, end of the world type of place to go and see. You don't want to stay there for a week, but some of the cruises up the Alaskan coastline actually do stop there. So perhaps worth a stopover. It's got the unique attribute of being the only place in the United States where there was a battle during World War II. So that's interesting. All right, Kiribati is an island nation that teeters dangerously close to the equator. It's actually the most eastern point in the world. It lies 1,650 miles, so sort of 2,300 kilometers southwest of Hawaii, and comprises 21 inhabited islands and 13 more that are totally desolate. Now, there's not a hell of a lot you can do there, apart from lying on the pristine white sand beaches. But what there is the largest protected marine reserve in the world. It's about the size of the Western Cape. While getting there is really, really tiresome. I mean, you have to fly in from Honolulu, and it takes about 4 stopover flights to various different islands. It's worth the slog because of the diving opportunity at the Protected Marine Reserve and because of the sheer beauty and barrenness. If you like empty beaches, that's the place to go. Here's one that's on my list at number 4. It's called Santalina, and it's an island, it's part of a chain of islands. It's probably most famous because that's where they banished Napoleon Bonaparte to. It's a tiny little British island at the moment. It's about 3,000 kilometers from South Africa and about 2,000 kilometers from South Africa and about 3,000 kilometers from Argentina. It's got a subtropical climate, diamond blue waters, lush vegetation, abundant wildlife, and the only people that live there are the ones who've lived there for the last couple of generations. You actually can't get permission to live there anymore. And the only way to get to St. Helena is via a Royal Mail ship called the RMS St. Helena that leaves from Cape Town, I think once every 2 weeks. And you basically catch a lift with this mail ship. Over the last couple of years, it's gotten a little bit more fancy. They've kind of done up some rooms. And I don't mean done them up like a cruise ship. They've done some rooms up specifically for people to catch kind of lifts with them. But you catch a lift and then you get there and you spend like 3 days there while the Royal Mail ship kind of unloads all of their supplies, all their food, all their everything. And then you get back on. And you'll actually spend more time on the ship getting there and back. But the reason I want to do it is because we're actually uniquely positioned in South Africa. It leaves from Cape Town. So, how can you miss out on that opportunity? No, everybody else has to travel across the world to get to Cape Town before they can even go. Number 3 is Deception Island in Antarctica. It was actually known as Deception Island because a guy crash landed his plane there, killing 4 people, and one other person was left to starve there waiting for people who were never coming to help him out. So that's a bit bleak, but it's basically an active volcano, this island, and people visit there to this remote island to look at the wildlife. The fur seals, the seabirds, the penguins. You can also swim in the Pendulum Cove's volcanically heated waters, and sometimes even experience an icy scuba dive in the restless volcano. There's history and ruins there as people tried to build whaling and Antarctic bases on Deception Island at one point, but it all failed because, quite honestly, it's as isolated as it gets down there, but really kind of a unique holiday destination. At number 2 is the Galapagos Islands, which is an archipelago of 60 islands, of which only 5 are inhabited. They're scattered basically roughly around the equator, 900 kilometers from Ecuador. It's populated by some 40,000 residents now, but 40,000 residents over that many islands, 60 islands, is pretty much nothing. It's probably the most famous for the fact that Charles Darwin is said to have come up with his theory of evolution while there, because you can actually see these kind of unique animals, sort of prehistoric kind of animals that have branched off from the rest of evolution. So that's an interesting reason to go if you are a history buff or a fan of evolution, like I am. At number 1 is an island called Rapa Nui, better known by its other name, the Easter Island. It's located in the Pacific Ocean, roughly 3,000 kilometers off the Chilean coast, and it's relatively small. It's only about 100 square kilometers, and it's inhabited by about 4,000 people. The first thing, if you've ever seen a picture of Easter Island, you'll think about is those enormous kind of rock heads called the moai, which were carved about 500 years ago by the local inhabitants. And they used all of the wood on the island to transport these enormous rocks into place. So Easter Island is for the most part deforested, but these iconic island kind of statues that just stand there on the beaches now looking out to sea are a must-see. They're one of those kind of really difficult kind of things that to get to that very few people have seen, but I think you will remember seeing. So at number 10, Supai, Arizona in the United States. Number 9, Sakhalin Island in Russia. Number 8, the Tibetan Plateau. Number 7, Concordia in Pakistan. Number 6, Attu Island, USA. Number 5, Kiribati. Number 4, St. Helena, which is our one, the one you can get to from Cape Town. At number 3, Deception Island in Antarctica. Number 2, Galapagos Islands. Number 1, Rapa Nui. If you have any questions about some of our topics today, you want to talk to Nita Hazel, you want to find out things about Singapore, let me know. I'm on Twitter basically all the time at Warren R. Comedian, or you can contact us on the Bulls Radio, or just SMS us, 41802, keyword Travelz. You guys have been absolutely great. Thank you very much. I'm playing out with another absolute classic road song, one that I think most people would put on any of their Travelz lists coming up.